the beliefs and also the thoughts of your granddad, Mahatma Gandhi?
Well, he came very close in touch with violence in South Africa
Hmm.
when he was there, and he saw the Zulu War and the Boer War and all the hate and the prejudice that was growing in the country. And of course, it was also prominent in India. And he was tired of violence, and he said, "This is not the way of civilization. Civilization is not about killing and hating people, it's about respect and loving and compassion." And so he devised, um, or rather brought out of history,
Hmm.
this whole philosophy of nonviolence, which had been buried in history for many, many centuries, and practiced it and showed us that we can live peacefully, we can live in harmony with each other, because peace to him did not mean absence of war. Peace to him meant creating harmony in society where all of us from different diversities can live together and respect each other and create that kind of peace. So that was his objective right from the beginning.
And as people say, there's always two different sides when it comes to political leaders. Now, Mahatma Gandhi, yes, he wanted to stop the violence. He wanted to, help India improve. Do you think the world today, on everybody has their own critic? Do you think the world is all about criticizing one political leader, another political leader, etc.? Do you think people actually understand what Gandhi actually did for the world?
Well, I think people in the political arena have not really understood because they don't want to understand.
Hmm.
They don't want the change. They are very happy with the way things are going. But there are lots of people at the grassroots level who have understood and who are making a change, one person at a time, and doing a wonderful job.
Hmm. And Gandhi, your grandfather, he was born in 1869. Do you
Uh-huh.
think he knew, like, the world, right? The world maybe 100 years ago, 50 years ago, etc. In my personal opinion, life has always been a bit difficult when it comes to segregation, sexuality, etc. Do you think he actually understood that it was going to improve. Life was going to improve when it gets to the 2000s. But at the same time, in order to get there, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of work when it comes to black people, white people, etc., in South Africa, etc.
Yeah, well, he was hopeful, and that's why he started the movement that at least we can begin to change.
Hmm.
And now, after many years of studying him and reading about him, I am convinced that his policy was, first of all, the policy of change,
Hmm.
philosophy of change. And it's only when we have the philosophy of change that we can practice philosophy of nonviolence and ahimsa. Without that, it's impossible to practice ahimsa. And that we are seeing today. People do use the philosophy of nonviolence on occasions and seemingly succeed, but they really don't because the violence continues.
Hmm.
He um, he once told me when I was living with him that we practice two kinds of violence: physical violence and passive violence.
Hmm.
And the difference between the two is that in one case, we use physical force.
Hmm.
In the other case, we hurt people without using physical force.
With our
So it
words.
is
Hmm.
with our words, with our relationships, our behavior, we've created a whole exploitative society. We exploit everything that we can lay our hands on.
mm,
And this he learned, strangely, from a British economist,
mm,
John Ruskin, who wrote a three-part article in the 1850s in which he criticized the economic industrial policy of the world. And he said this policy is going to divide people and make the rich richer and the poor poorer. And it's going to be very detrimental to the world. He advocated a change to a more simple life. And that appealed to grandfather. And that's why he changed himself to show the world that it is possible to live simply and with happiness without being greedy and selfish and creating all these problems that we are creating today. But the British economist was banned. His articles were, they declined to publish them. He eventually brought out a little pamphlet incorporating the three articles, and that is what my grandfather read. And he realized the truth in it, and so he changed his life. So he not just changed because he wanted to identify with the poor in India, but he changed to show the world that it is possible to live a simple life.
Ajit Kumar, after you, sir.
Absolutely. Mr. Gandhi, would like to understand or hear from you about your career choices. Did you aspire to be a politician to take the movement of your grandfather, or was it by choice that you wanted to pursue as an author?
So my grandfather was very astute. He, in his lifetime, he had requested the family not to get involved in politics because he realized that we would not be able to get into politics on our own merits. It would always be because of him and because of and he didn't want his name or his descendants to uh, benefit from this. So he requested the family to keep away from it and just get involved in social work. And that's why all of us have been involved in social work rather than in politics.
And do you also think, Mr. Gandhi, the generation that we're in today in the world in 2022, coming up to 2023, all this social media, internet, etc., segregate? Because remember, there is, in my personal opinion, there is still very hidden segregation and racism in this world. What do you think your granddad would have an opinion about today's generation?
Well, he would be very disappointed because, instead of moving away from violence and hate and prejudice, we are getting more and more involved in hate and prejudice. And that is because of the system that we have created, a system of exploitation. We cannot exploit people if we respect them. We have to hate them to be able to exploit them. And I'm increasingly believing now that poverty in the world is deliberate. We have deliberately
100%.
kept people in poverty because we need this whole industrial base depends on cheap labor.
Mm.
If we don't get cheap labor, this whole economy would collapse. And the only way we can now get cheap labor is by keeping people in poverty and exploiting
Mm. And do you also think what's happening in India, there are, how do I say this, even those 1.2 billion people, and yes, the country is secretly, in my personal opinion, wealthy in all terms when it comes to government, etc. Do you think India could be improved? But do you also think the India government and minister, etc., don't want India to improve when it comes to local people, and they want to keep them down in below in the poverty line?
Yeah, definitely. That's the whole policy of the world, and India is part of the world there. And, I will even go to the extent of saying that when uh, we won independence from the British, what we did was we removed the British colonialists and replaced them with Indian colonialists.
Hmm.
They just moved into the whole infrastructure that the British had created of oppressing people. And now our own people live like the British lived at that time, and they continue to oppress uh, the uh, the people. So we didn't change very much.
And what do you
We
think your
just,
grandfather would have an opinion about today's Prime Minister Narendra Modi? In my personal opinion, you have to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you. In my personal opinion, I have two opinions about Narendra Modi. One, I see that just wants to be in power all the time, and the other time has the power in order to make things happen, good things happen. And yes, he might do things in the public eye to make good things happen, but also there's also times where he could do better, but he doesn't want to. What's your opinion, and what do you think your grandfather's opinion would be today?
well, I think he's the typical politician who wants to play both sides and keep in power and be permanently in power there. And that's what all politicians everywhere do. They say one thing and do another thing. They have their, in India, they say you have your one foot in milk and the other foot in yogurt. And that's what he's doing. And I don't think he's unique. I think he's just another regular politician like everywhere else, who is there to exploit and remain in power by any means possible.
Mr. Duke Kumar, after you.
Yeah, Kiran earlier touched upon the social media and the internet. In the time of Mahatma Gandhi, grandfather, it was not easy to communicate, but still he pulled the whole nation together. How can in today's world we can use the power of communication and information to educate people? You also touched upon the point that the poverty is deliberate. The only way I think is by educating people we can overcome that. How can we use the power of internet and the social media platform for communication?
I think it's a very powerful weapon that we have that we can use. But unfortunately, it's become part of the whole system of exploitation. And
Mm.
instead of using it with moral authority and values, we are just promoting more hate and prejudice. Giving vent to all our negative thoughts and negative behavior, which has become so much a part of us that we
Yeah.
think respect and understanding and compassion and all of these good things are signs of weaknesses. That we have to be aggressive, we have to be strong, we have to be, radical. All of these things have come up, and that brings with it all this whole basket of hate and prejudice.
I am also fortunate to work closely with some of the leading technology of today. Artificial intelligence is the area which I also cover. There are few leaders who believe in ethical practices because they have the power of information sharing. If I were to ask, how can we get some of the guidance of Mahatma Gandhi to translate in bringing values into these leaders and practices?
That's the problem. You see, they don't want the values and morals because that would then take away the power that they have.
Hmm.
They want to maintain the immoral structure, and the only value they have is money. They just keep talking about money and luring people in money, talking to people about making millions and so on, as if that is the only thing in life.
Absolutely. I also want to ask you something. Now, I do not want to make this into a situation, but I also want you to be open-minded, and I do not mind, and I really hope you can have a good debate with me. But there is good things to one person, to one side, political, activists, etc. There's always good things, but there's always a downfall. And I need to ask the question to know if it's true coming from you. Now, because you are the only person in my context that I will know if the story or the information is true. But your grandfather had a reputation of having a hidden segregation opinions in South Africa. He also wrote a book, right? The South African Gandhi. He said, infidelity, Indians are superior over Black South Africans. Is that true, Mr. Gandhi?
Yes, it is true, because he was influenced so much by British culture and tradition when he studied in England. And he had tremendous respect for the British people. And he noticed that the British people were always talking in this kind of fashion, putting down the African people and so on. So that influenced him considerably. And then when he went to South Africa, the first people he met of African origin, I mean, closely met, were people in prison.
Mm.
But
And
but
and
his
so
his beliefs, though, Mr. Gandhi, is saying one thing. Sorry to interrupt you there. But his beliefs are saying we're going to stop racism. We're going to stop. We're going to have humanity. We're going to have kindness in this world. But at the same time, he's writing about a book between saying Indians are more superior than Black South African. How does that? Where's the dynamic from that?
well, that is because we believe that he was born a Mahatma,
Hmm.
that he was
Mm.
born a great person with great ideas. He was not. He was born like you and me, with the same, failings. And
Absolutely.
he acknowledges in his biography that he failed in many things. But the good thing about him is he recognized his failures
Mm.
and corrected them. Whereas we stand with our failures because we are so ashamed of recognizing and correcting them, we just live with the failure. But he changed. And that is what we need to understand, that he was not born a Mahatma. He was born an average human being who eventually became a Mahatma because he kept changing at every stage in his life. At every stage, when he found that he had gone on a wrong track, he turned around and became a better human being.
Mr. Jeet Kumar, after you, sir.
No, that's fantastic. And early on, you mentioned, Mr. Gandhi, that he gave the guidance to the family. It's one thing that he gave the guidance, but it's commendable how the family is following that. Do you see that this will continue in the family, or will there be a change that we get to see some leaders coming
Well,
forefront?
who can say about the future generations? It's up to them. The message gets diluted with each generation. And so I can't say what the future generations will do. But at least up to my generation or my son's generation, we have abided by this.
And do you think racism will stop, Mr. Gandhi? Do you think segregation in this world will stop?
It can stop. I say it can stop overnight if we stop being such greedy and exploitative people. If we learn to respect and understand each other, because that is what civilization is.
Mm.
And if we consider ourselves to be civilized human beings, we should be loving and respecting and understanding people and reaching out to create harmony in society and not building weapons of mass destruction um, by the millions to kill people. Now,
Mm.
today there's a report in the New York Times that the United States is spending billions of dollars in building a new military industry, building new weapons. Now,
Mm.
what do we need all these weapons for if we are a civilized human being?
And what's your opinion about it? What's your opinion about what do you think? What do you think they're doing it for?
Well, because we are so barbaric. I mean, very plainly, we are barbaric. We are so wedded to violence. We think the only way we can resolve issues is by killing people and destroying people. And, we have taken the very easy way out, where we have defined people in good people and bad people. People who do bad things, we condemn them as bad people and eliminate them. And that's not true because each one of us has the capacity to do good or to do bad, depending on what buttons are pressed and what circumstances we have to live in. So, what are we going to do? Eventually kill everybody because everybody turns bad sometime or
You
the
you
other?
sound disappointed, Mr. Gandhi. Am I right to say that? You sound disappointed in the world that's happened today and how it's revolved from your grandfather's work in order to make peace, to make
Yes, I am.
sacrifices.
I'm sorry, yes. I am disappointed because I see the proliferation of violence. I see little children being shot down with military weapons in schools here in the United States, the most civilized country in the world. And they are shredded to pieces because of those bullets that are used to them. And yet nobody makes any noise about it. Nobody says anything. The politicians say guns don't kill, people kill. What sort of nonsense is that? And it is so disheartening that it's so easy to proliferate violence in this world rather than peace.
Do you think your grandfather's hard work has gone to waste?
No, I don't think any work goes to waste. We it's just that it takes much longer for people to understand and come to some conclusions there.
Mm.
But I think, like grandfather used to tell me, that all you can be is a peace farmer, like a farmer who goes out into the fields and plants seeds and hopes and prays that he gets a good crop. You are a peace farmer. You go out and plant seeds in the minds of people and hope and pray that you get a good crop. So that's what I've been doing.
Do you miss your
So
grandfather, Mr. Gandhi? Do you miss him?
I do very much. I wish I was a little more adult and a little more mature when I stayed with him. Would have learned much more from him.
Can you also tell me a story or a memory that you have, or maybe a family memory that no one's ever known about it before, or something that you can tell the public or the world today? So a story that's a kind of important story that you want to share.
Well, I think there are two very important stories that I would love to share. One was, I grew up in South Africa and became a victim of prejudice and apartheid and all that. And I was very angry because of that. And I wanted eye for an eye justice. And it became an obsession with me. And I started going to the gym and doing exercises so I could beat up people when they confronted me. And that's when my parents took me to India to live with grandfather. I was 12 years old then. And the first lesson that grandfather taught me was about understanding anger. He said, anger is like electricity. It's just as useful and just as powerful, but only if we use it intelligently. But it can be just as destructive and negative if we abuse it. So just as we channel electric energy and bring it into our lives and use it for the good of humanity, we must learn to channel anger in the same way so that we can use that energy for the good of humanity rather than abuse it and cause death and destruction. And I think that is a very important lesson because we don't talk about anger, we don't teach anger, we don't tell anybody how to use anger. We just let them find their own ways. And the result is that we all end up abusing it when we don't need to. I think that's a very important lesson that we need to teach our children so that they are well equipped to use their anger when it comes and use it intelligently. The second lesson I think that was very powerful was what I alluded to earlier when about passive violence and physical violence. And that happened when I was coming back from school one day and I threw away a little 3-inch pencil because I thought I deserved a better pencil to use. And I was so sure that grandfather would give me a new pencil when I asked him for one. But that evening when I met grandfather and asked him for a pencil to do my lessons with, instead of giving me one, he subjected me to a lot of questions. He wanted to know how the pencil became small and where did I throw it away and why did I throw it away and on and on. And I couldn't understand why he was making such a fuss over a little pencil until he told me to go out and look for it. And it was late in the evening, and I said, how do you expect me to look in the dark for the pencil? He said, here's a torch. Go out and look for the pencil, and I want to see how big it is. And I spent a couple of hours, I think, searching for the pencil. And finally, when I found it and brought it to him, he said, now I want you to sit here and learn two very important lessons. The first lesson is that even in the making of a simple thing like a pencil, we use a lot of the world's natural resources. And when we throw them away, we are throwing away the natural resources of the world, and that is violence against nature. And the second lesson is that because in an affluent society we can afford to buy all these things in bulk and just throw them around because we can afford it, we are over-consuming the resources of the world. And because we are over-consuming them, we are depriving people elsewhere of these resources, and they have to live in poverty. And that is violence against humanity. Now, that was the first time I realized that all of these things that we do today, things that we waste and throw away and just overconsume, that all of these things are acts of violence. I mean, imagine here in the United States, it is said that we throw away 160 billion, that is billion with a B, $160 billion worth of food every year goes into the garbage. If the United States is doing that, how much the rest of the world is doing? I mean, in India, I know people throw away food like mad everywhere. And yet we have so many hungry people and we don't care about it because we are satisfied. We have our uh, tummies full. Who cares about other people? So it is that kind of passive violence that we are committing all the time. It's become so much second nature with us that we don't even think about it as violence. And yet it is that passive violence that ultimately fuels the fire of physical violence, because the victim of passive violence gets angry and uses that anger to cause physical violence. So it is passive violence that fuels the fire of physical violence. If we want to put out the fire of physical violence, we have to cut off the fuel supply. And since the fuel supply comes from each one of us, we have to be the change we wish to see in the world.
And my last question to you, Mr. Gandhi, before I let you continue your evening. What's your opinion about Joe Biden? And also, what's your opinion about Donald Trump?
And, Donald Trump, I think, is the greatest buffoon this world has ever seen. And I don't know how he gets the following he does, but it's an indication of how morally decrepit we have become there. And Joe Biden, I think, is just another politician.
Do you think
He's there.
do you think he's a strong president? Because in my personal, I think he's a very weak president, in my opinion.
No, he's not very strong.
Hmm.
And I guess because he doesn't have the support as much as other people have had. But whether one is strong or weak, the system that we have created is so
Manipulative.
manipulated that no single politician, however strong he would be, can make a very significant difference. I think in our lifetime, or at least in my lifetime, John F. Kennedy was a very strong president. But he wasn't really able to achieve anything because at every stage his party cut him off. So there's something wrong with the whole system.
Mm.
We talk about democracy, but democracy is not perfect. And yet we don't want to make it perfect.
Do you think us human beings, we don't want to be perfect? Oh, no, hang on. I'll rephrase that. Do you think us human beings are not directed enough and educated enough to be perfect?
Nobody is educated enough to be perfect, but we can try to be perfect. We can try to do the best we can. And when we see that something is not working properly, we should be able to try to find a different way of doing it. But we don't want to. We just happy with the situation, happy with the ability here in the United States, for instance, people have made politics their profession. I mean, senators have been there for 30, 40 years. Congressmen have been serving for 30, 40 years. It's become a whole life for them. And that should not be. That's not what democracy is.
Mr. Gandhi, I want to say thank you so much for your time today. And I really want to say it was a truly honor to talk to you and listen to you. And I'm going to be listening to this all night. And it's a great education for someone like me, but also people out there who are going to have the opportunity to watch this today. So thank you so much for talking about your grandfather. Thank you for representing, and thank you for representing the Gandhi family on behalf of this interview. And thank you for giving us a great education and a real understanding. So, and God bless you and your family. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you, sir.
It was a great pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit.
Thank you.
Thank you.